10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
Liftoff and the clock is starting.
The clock is operating. We're underway.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
After 10 years and 311 million miles, we hook on to Kerbalcast, episode 27. We are on the Comet.
The biggest problem of success is that it looks easy.
I'm your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, and our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
Coming up in today's program, I'll tell you all about my adventures in the Joule system, also known as how I almost landed on Laythe.
I'll tell you about how I still don't know how to do that thing I've been trying to do.
And we'll get your letters in this week's mission briefing.
Including an epic fail story from Amy K.
And get to hear the blockbuster movie trailer for Kerbalcast, the action movie.
And we have this week's Shea Challenge and another edition of Flight School with Wanderfound.
Yay!
Yeah!
Well, big news this past week. For the first time in history, we landed a satellite on a comet. That is an amazing... the Kerbalers, I think, understood
like
just how difficult
the magnitude
that was.
of something like that.
Yeah, I think a lot. I think other people were... I think non-Kerbalers were, so what?
Yeah, it's like, how hard could that be?
Yeah, I mean, it's up there. That thing's pretty big. It's
like
easy to get to.
It's like that space program apathy thing that I've talked about a couple times. Is like
how hard can it be?
Yeah, that's somebody's job, so it shouldn't be that hard,
Well, it was just to do my Kerbal credentials. I was telling people going, yeah, I've done that in the game too. Not as hard. It's not as difficult.
Yeah.
They didn't have the F9 option, unfortunately. So, but anyway, it took them, they launched this thing 10 years ago. It traveled 311 million miles. The way I describe it is it's like trying to land a bullet on a bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or trying to hit a bullet with a bullet. Anyway, difficult stuff. Well, let's get into our progress for the week. I went first last week, so you get to go first this week.
Okay, mine's a short.
Tell me about that thing you do.
Yeah, it's short and pitiful. It is so. I still can't.
We should mention your work schedule again.
Yeah.
Intruded.
Whenever we enter in the wintertime, can pull me in at some random hours. To.
The world is ending. We need you.
Yeah, I just need to make sure the world is safe.
Yeah.
From 1 inch of ice.
I'm Nos Man.
Yeah. So, what I thought was going to be my progress day turned into my work day. So, I managed to get a couple of hours in before I was interrupted, and I spent that time and a little bit of time before I got here, trying to rendezvous, and I've gotten really, really close.
Okay.
I got to the point where I was able to switch between them, and that's not because it intersected. It was because they just drifted that close to each other. So that's
close enough.
Progress.
Yeah.
I did learn from previous episodes that we did, I was below it. Mm-hmm. And so if you're below, you have to be behind.
Right.
Well, I got ahead.
It's the other way. If you're behind something and you're trying to catch up, you have to be below it.
Yeah.
If
you want to catch something and you're below it, you need to be behind.
Yeah. If the object that you're trying to catch up to is in front of you, you need to be lower.
Yeah.
Because that makes you move faster relative.
Yeah. So
if the object's behind you, you need to be higher.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. If you're that's the way I remember it, is to catch something below, behind.
Oh, okay. I see how you're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know, stupid little rhyming things, but it
works.
It works. So
a mnemonic device.
I was below and behind, and then I got ahead of it. Mm-hmm. So I just moved one part of my orbit way out, and I looped out and let it go ahead of me, and then I came back, lowered the orbit back to where I was below it again. So I found the fix to that, because what I was doing before I thought to do that was I would just fast forward as fast as I could until it got close again, which whenever you're as close as I was, it took a while. Mm-hmm. So I was like, there's got to be, I could just swing out and then swing back in.
Yeah.
Just make my orbit grow and be oblong and then take it back to a circle.
Are you creating maneuver nodes to do this?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Not just thrusting and then, I'm creating maneuver nodes to make and bring those orbits back. So I've gotten to where I'm right on the thing. And I actually got so close, I switched over to, just because I could, I switched over to Herman.
Right.
Herman Kerman.
Herman Kerman?
And I saw the ship go by. Like, yeah, I was like, I was like, well, the RCS pack isn't going to catch that one.
Yeah.
So,
honestly, that is early stage rendezvous right there when you're trying to learn. It's you spend hours chasing the nav ball.
Yeah.
It was like, zoom.
So whenever I got to, because you can switch to see the velocity, and I switched to target.
Right.
And it was at like 80. So that's really close from what I can gather, right? That you're moving close to the same speed, or?
No, you actually, if you're moving at exactly the same speed, I mean, you're down to like 0.
Okay.
Because when it's in target mode, what it is showing you is your relative speed to the target.
Okay.
And based on where the target is and your yellow circle direction of motion, that shows you, the direction of motion shows you where you're moving relative to the target, and the speed that is indicated on target is how fast you're moving relative to the target.
Okay.
So, like, for example, if you've got the pink target and the yellow circle is dead center and you're moving at 80 meters per second, you're moving directly at the target at 80 meters per second.
Okay.
And you're about to see the nice news explosion effects.
So the smallest velocity, the smallest number I got was about 81.
Okay.
So
Yeah, ideally you want to get it down to where... you want to be able to get it to where you can make it 0.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you're at 0, you're not going to be able to approach the target and dock, because if you're at 0, then that means you're not moving
at the
towards
same
it
speed,
or moving away from it.
But if you were to be next to it, you want to move.
If what tells you that you're in a good position to dock is if you can bring your speed down to 0, or you can make your speed a negative, like minus 1 meter per second.
Yeah.
If you can manipulate plus or minus 0 meters per second, that means you're in a good position to dock.
How do you slow down that, like, just a minute number like that?
What I do is, until I get my orbits fairly close, I don't worry about target. Because, when you get to a certain distance from your target, your nav ball automatically switches over to target mode, okay?
Yeah.
Well, you can click, obviously, on the little window and change it back to orbit. When I get close to my target, and I am to the point where I need to make the orbits about the same so that they stay fairly relative to, that they stay fairly close relative to each other.
Yeah.
What I will do, once I'm close to my target, I'll go to orbit, and then I will, for example, if, let's say, I'm coming in under my target, I'm coming up from behind it, what I need to do there is I need to increase my speed, because what I want is, from the map view, I want my orbit to look exactly like the orbit of my target. Okay. What happens is, if your orbit, let's say your target orbit is a perfect circle, and your orbit is like an oval. Well, what's going to happen is, at different points as you're approaching your target, you're going to be moving away from it and then towards it and then away from it. If you get the two orbits to where they're pretty much the same shape, then you're in a position to where you can make minute adjustments to where you're moving relative to the target. You're not fighting the oval shape of your orbit.
Yeah.
So what I do is once I'm close to my target, I switch to orbital. I will make the orbit as close to my target's orbit as possible. Then I switch to target, and that's when I start adjusting my relative position. Does that make any sense?
I think so. So where I'm at is I have two orbits. Like, I have, my ship, and then I have Herman.
Right.
Which I actually think, in retrospect, is probably a bad idea, because trying to rendezvous with that little guy, he's so close to the planet that it's really hard to zoom in to see how close things are. I really think that came back to bite me.
Is he the rescue the Kerbal?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I may have been, I don't know, I need to get a little bit farther out with two ships and do it with two ships, because I think trying to practice with him
Right.
He's so close, I can't zoom in close enough to really see how far apart they are. I can get a little bit, but whenever it comes to making a maneuver node,
Right.
I can't see near close enough.
Right.
So, but just using this example, so I am currently behind him. I'm just a little bit behind Herman, and it's about my orbit is around 1,000 meters closer to the planet.
Okay.
So, like, I'm 1,000 meters lower in altitude.
Okay. So your altitude is 1 kilometer. Is that what you're saying?
No, wait. It's 5 kilometers.
5 kilometers. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with
It's
you.
around 5 kilometers
Okay.
difference. So, like, let's say I'm at 95,000 and he's at 1,000 or 100,000.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm at 95,000. He's at 100,000.
Oh, okay. I'm with you.
So,
Okay.
I need to, and I'm behind them.
Numbers is hard.
Yeah, I am behind Herman by about, I don't know. I was let's throw in another 5. I think I'm
Okay.
around 5.
Okay.
5,000.
But you're coming up.
No,
you're,
I'm 5 kilometers behind him.
Okay. So you're about 5,000. You're about 5,000 meters lower than he is, and he's about 5,000 meters ahead of you. Is that what you're saying? Would that be
Yeah.
about right?
Yeah. So
Okay.
we have 5,000 between the orbits,
Okay.
and then 5 between them two.
Question:
Yes.
Is your orbit?
Yeah. Can I make this any more confusing?
No,
Is
no,
that the
you're
question?
fine. No, because this is one of those things that would be very easy
If you could
if
see
we
it.
could see it. But
Yeah.
the fact that we're talking about it,
So now we know what it's like to be a listener.
yeah,
I'm like, hey, look at this shadow puppet I'm making. It's so cool.
maybe that's why people said, "Hey, tweet out pictures so
Yeah,
we can figure
yeah.
out what the heck you guys are talking about."
So, okay. So,
Now, okay, question though.
Yes.
Is your orbit, is it basically a smaller version of the other one? In other words, again,
It's-
let's say Herman's orbit is a perfect circle.
It is.
yours a perfect circle?
Very close.
Just 5,000 meters under it?
for the most part, yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they're basically the same shape.
Yeah, at no point
Okay.
does it
We're with- I'm
go
with you.
beyond his circle.
Okay, I'm with you.
So, at what do I do in order to catch up with him? Because if I make the orbit the same size,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just moving the same speed he is at the same time, and I never catch up.
Well, if you're below him, then you should be faster. You're moving faster than him.
Yes.
Okay, so at some point you're going to surpass, at some point you're going to move past him. You're going
Yeah.
to be in front of him.
Yeah.
So what you want to do at this point, and this is where the maneuver node comes in. Maneuver nodes, especially when you're learning, they're like practice swings. Mm-hmm. Because you can create a maneuver node and play around with it and see if what you want to do works. And if it doesn't, you just exit out.
Yeah.
And then create another one, and you just keep practicing until you get what you want. What you need to do as you approach him, you need to slow down relative to your target. Well, the way to slow down your relative speed is to increase your altitude. So what you want to do is you want to create a maneuver node, and generally when you're approaching a target, the rule of thumb I use is Kerbal is a circle, obviously. Break it up into quarters. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to try your first attempt, and this doesn't always work. This is why we get into practice swings. But basically, pick a point about a quarter way of that circle, and that's where you create your maneuver node. And what you want to do is you want to increase your speed, i.e. your altitude.
Yeah.
And you will change your orbital shape to where it's an oval. And it will, as you come around the planet, your altitude will increase, and the oval will eventually, at its highest point, touch the orbit of your target. Okay? And that's generally where you'll get the little indicators that show you how close to your target you're at.
Yeah.
Okay? When you get to that point, that's where you make another maneuver node and increase the altitude on the other side. In other words, you've raised your apoapsis. Now, when you get to there, you want to raise your periapsis. You see? And again, it's matching your orbits. If your orbits aren't the same when you get close, you're going to be fighting the orbital. You're going to be fighting the difference between the orbits,
Yeah.
in addition to your relative motion to your target.
Okay.
So yeah, what you want to do is, as you're approaching the target, create a maneuver node, increase your speed, increase your altitude. Okay. And if you need to, you can create your apoapsis to where it actually goes higher than your target's orbit.
What for?
But if you, because what you do is you may actually see that the indicators of your target and your craft, where they're going to, their separation distance.
Like the red triangle.
Well, if you're increasing on the maneuver node, if you're increasing your speed, okay, and you see that those indicators are moving together, then continue to do that. Ideally, you want to get to where your separation is point something, point one is great.
Okay.
But you want to make that adjustment to where the two come together. When you get to there, that's when you need to flatten out your orbit again. Okay. But I'm saying that when you're making your maneuver node, depending on what your separation is, you can continue to increase the size of your orbit to bring those two together. Have I lost you?
No. No, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I hit you on that for a second.
Yeah.
Okay,
once you get close, create a maneuver node and then just watch what the separation indicators.
Okay. So
because, they're like two little white flags,
Yeah.
like two little white points.
Okay, so let's say you're in that same exact orbit. Like you guys just made the perfect circles together. And you're not close enough to them.
Okay.
How do you catch up to them?
Well,
because if you increase your speed, that's going to change your orbit.
Okay. You are in the same orbit and the ship your target is in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay. You need to create a maneuver node and slow down, lower your altitude. And again, you can watch, because you'll notice that when you drop your altitude, because, we're back to the oval shape instead of the circle shape.
Yeah.
When you do that, you should still have the white flags indicating the separation distance. As you change your altitude, as you change the shape of your orbit, you should still see, since there is a part of the orbit that overlaps, you should still see those two separation flags.
Yeah.
And you should be able to manipulate your maneuver node to bring those two together.
Okay. Well, that's what I'll be working on this week. So that's my progress report.
I hope it's hard to, I know how to do this. It's just hard to say it.
Well, see, that's the hard part is right now, like, I'm able to get to the Mun and back without having to do this.
Right.
I know I'll have to do it in order to do anything else, unless I just build giant monstrosity ships, and that's going to be more frustrating, I think, because I'm going to watch those things crash after spending hours building them.
Right.
So I have this one ship, nuke engines, and it gets a lot of miles per gallon, so I've not even gone through half my fuel, so I can keep making these little adjustments.
Right. Well, and also, as we talked about last week, if you don't know how to rendezvous, that limits how far out you can go.
Yeah.
To create a ship big enough to get you all the way from Kerbin to Duna and back, that you're talking about a whole host of headaches.
Yeah. So I know I need to learn this. It's just really not fun. So
well, remember, and we talked about this, I think almost it was either our first or second episode. I got so frustrated, I actually quit playing the game for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally did. I literally just, for 2 weeks, I went, I can't do this anymore.
But you weren't doing a weekly podcast on it.
Yeah, that's true. That's
so
true.
I have this like,
yeah.
This weight over my head.
Yeah, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was, I took about like a 2-week break, and I think I went back to playing Minecraft because I had been just eaten up with Minecraft, and then I found Kerbal. And I got eaten up with that, and then it got so difficult that it wasn't fun anymore. If I remember correctly, I think what got me back into Kerbal was I went and saw Gravity, and I came home and I thought, well, I think I'll play Kerbal again, and and that's when it's like the very first time I brought it up. Boom, I did my rendezvous.
Yeah. I've had things like that.
And then I spent 2 weeks trying to figure out how I did it.
You step away from something, and you come back, and it's not near as hard as you thought it was. You just, boom, you just knock it out. You know
the expression, sleep on it. People always say, I need to sleep on it.
Yeah.
Even if you're not consciously working on a problem, a lot of times in the back of your mind you are. And when you step away from something and then come back to it, sometimes you'll find that you have the answer now because without realizing it, you stepped away and your brain continued to work on the problem.
Yeah, and well, you cleared your head.
Yeah.
And so you come back and you go to work on the thing and you don't have all these pent-up frustrations with it. So you're able to just look at it like it's not that big of a deal. You know?
Well, I think we've all been in the situation with a video game where, you know how you're at the end of a level and for some reason you can't advance?
Yeah.
And you've clicked every button and you've looked in every nook and cranny and you've done everything you can think of, and nothing seems to end that level. And in frustration, you throw the controller down and, you storm off, and then you come back to it the next day and it's like, oh, I have to step on the cricket.
Yeah.
Or, some stupid little something like that.
Yeah, I had that with FTL. I just could not beat it. I just hated it. It made me so mad. And then I went and played a whole bunch of other stuff after a while, and then I came back and I was like, I'll try it. Beat the flagship.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. Well, I just needed to stop being so angry at it.
Yeah. I did that with Diablo 3. There was this boss that for the life of me I could not get past.
Yeah.
And then when I came back to it, it was like, 5 minutes and he was, one and done.
Some of those games I've quit so long that I beat the boss by outliving him.
You come back and they're like in walkers.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you, you whippersnapper. Hold still.
So what's your progress?
Okay. My progress, you need to do, there's 2 sounds I want you to make throughout my progress, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Yay.
Yay.
And boo. You remember last time I told you that I finally went to every planetary system in the game.
Yay!
Yeah, yay. And the reason I said planetary system was I have been to Jewel, but I haven't landed on anything in Jewel. Okay. But last week I went to Elu and landed there, and that was the last system that I needed to go to and actually landed. But the one system I have not landed on anything was Jewel. So I said, okay, well this week I'm going to focus on Jewel, okay? And Laythe is going to be my first target because Laythe is the most Kerban-like. Even though it's mostly water, the land masses are very small, and trust me, they're very difficult to hit.
Yeah.
Very difficult to hit. Because you really there really isn't one big continent on the planet. Because trust me, I was looking for the biggest piece of real estate I could find. Because trying to hit those things, I mean, you have to start deorbiting like halfway around the globe just to get in a position to where you can come in and land on that little tiny, little tiny piece of dirt. Okay, so I finally deorbited and I finally came in for a landing. And this only took about 2 or 3 times. Most of them were going right into the water.
Boo.
Yeah, there you go. Huh. Remember, you have to say the you have to do the yays and the nays.
Sorry.
Yeah, a lot of them were going like right into the water. Okay.
Boo.
I finally came straight down. I mean, I finally got it to where I was actually coming down on terra firma. Okay. Yay. And Laythe has it has a fairly thick atmosphere. Okay.
Oh no.
So I was able to fire my parachute and use that to assist my landing. Burning my engines full throttle, I could not get my speed down below about 13 meters a second. So when my lander touched down, it would immediately explode.
Didn't we have a letter about you being at 13 meters a second when going off the surface or something?
Oh, yeah. But
was that related?
Yeah, but this was actually, I was actually coming down at 13 meters a second. I mean, I was literally coming down too fast.
Yeah. Okay.
This wasn't like, because you remember when I talked about it last time.
You couldn't get below 13 meters
I said I couldn't get below it, but I was still touching down just fine.
And
somebody said, well, you may have been in a different mode, and you may have been getting the orbital velocity mixed in, and that's why
the surface.
Yeah, in reality, you were coming down at 1 meter per second, but you factor in the planetary spin, and all of a sudden you got 13. No, I was literally coming down at 13 meters a second. It was too fast, and the reason, hey, you did the mic.
Yeah.
The reason I know it was too fast was because every time I would touch down, the thing would either explode or it would fall over.
Well, those aren't good.
No.
Oh, sorry. Boo.
Yeah, thank you. And also, you will like this part. When the thing would fall over, I would actually try and rollie it
Oh, to get it to ramp up.
to get it to stand back up. And
I
so
just
I'd
don't-
roll around and
I
I
don't think it can be done. I've tried it so many times.
yeah,
in
I would.
different
I was.
gravity.
It's like I was trying to find like rocks and things that I could bounce off of, and
Yeah,
put
and
it
then get
straight.
your RCS
Yeah.
to put it back. Yeah.
Now all that happened was I'd roll around for a while, and
And
then
parts
like the
explode.
capsule would fall off.
Yeah.
Or like the legs would fall off or something.
Little pieces explode. Yeah.
But I kept F9 and I'd reload, land, crash, reload, land, crash. And this went on and on and on. And finally, one time, because I had a feeling that I was, at some point the odds were going to be in my favor. And sure enough, one time I landed, it bounced, and I managed to keep it upright all the way down. So there I am. I'm sitting on the surface of Laythe. Yay. Jebediah jumps out. He does his EVA, he does his soil sample, and he can't get back up the ladder.
Oh, no. No. Wait, I thought you were doing the thing where there was access at the bottom.
Well, that was before. See, remember, I'm doing RCS landers now.
Oh.
Okay. So now I've got Jeb standing on the surface of Laythe. Okay.
No.
And because of the problems I was having landing, burning full throttle with the RCS, there was no way I was getting off Laythe anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so not only was Jeb stranded on the surface of Laythe, even if he did manage to get back up,
He'd still be stranded on the
he
surface
was
of
not
Laythe.
going anywhere because
Yeah.
that thing was not lifting off. Okay, so, and I had done, without really thinking about it, because I've gotten in the habit lately of doing the Alt F5, where you can do individual saves instead of just the F5. Well, I didn't think about that, and when I was burning in through the atmosphere, coming in for my landing, because it had taken me so long to get lined up to where I could actually land on some ground, I hit F5, not realizing that that was going to create a whole series of problems.
Yeah.
Because I would F9 and I would always reappear as I was burning through the atmosphere. Okay?
Yeah, so it's too late.
So at that point, it was too late because the craft was not powerful enough to pull me out of this descent. So no matter what I did, I could not reload to a point where I could get Jeb off the surface of Laythe. So finally what I had to do was I had to go in and load an earlier save.
Yeah.
Which, are
What?
you ready for this? Do you know how far back I was?
Welcome to the Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah, almost. I was in, I'm not kidding, when I reloaded my previous save, I was still in orbit around Kerban. I wasn't even in the Joule system. And I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding.
Welcome to the NOS School of Aeronautics.
Yeah. Oh, and also another thing, it turns out that I'm a big fat stinking liar. Do you remember last week I said I was trying to do the encounter with Elu, and because Elu and Joule were so close together, I was having trouble creating an Elu encounter, but no matter what I did, I was getting a Joule encounter. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I said, and this is the big stinking lie part, I said when I actually intend to go to Joule, I will not be able to create Joule encounters that easily. Well, guess what?
You were.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I created a maneuver node and I pulled the prograde tab, and it's like, it did the solar orbit, and then it was like, blink, Joule encounter. It was like, really? It's like I didn't have to wait until the planets were where I had a transfer window.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like just where I was, because I had been building a big ship in orbit. By the time I added the last piece, Kerman was in the perfect position to do a transfer to the Joule system. And I mean, literally, it was a matter of pulling the prograde tab until they encountered. And that was it.
Nice.
Well, but I said last week
Yeah.
that I would not be able to do that. And yet,
It's like the easiest one you've ever done.
yeah, it's like the easiest one I've ever done. And so sure enough, I reloaded and I recreated a transfer, because when you go back to the previous save, it also puts you back to where all the planets were.
Yeah.
So Kerman was still in a perfect position to do the transfer. So I did my transfer into the Joule system. Well, this time, understanding that I'm boring you, you're yawning. This is like the most boring story ever.
No, it's like it's
I know,
it's
you're
cold
working.
enough to make you yawn, but then you put on your jacket and you're too warm.
Uh-huh.
It's like it's that I don't know. Beautiful cross of
You're
uncomfortable temperatures.
Everybody's a critic. You're criticizing my story.
Boo.
Boo. But anyway, so this time, understanding the problems that I'd had with Laythe. And since I reloaded, even though technically I landed on Laythe and I took a soil sample and did all that stuff.
Yeah.
Technically, I haven't.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, you know.
So you can't just lie to the people that,
yeah.
you know.
I mean, I
lie to
did the
listeners.
Eternal Sunshine wipe. I've completely forgotten that I landed on Laythe. So before I left this time, I went on Wiki and I did some looking because I was going, okay, I've got an RCS lander with, you know, X amount of thrust. What am I going to be able to land on? And it turns out that I had two targets that were acceptable. I could either do BOP or I could do POL.
Yeah.
POL. I'm hoping.
Pole.
Pole.
Yeah.
Okay. And I decided, okay, I'm going to go for Pole. I wanted to go to BOP. I almost decided to go to BOP because you know why? BOP is home of the Kraken.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Everyone talks about that thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah. According to the wiki, it says it's the mythical home of the Kraken.
Oh.
But I wanted to, given the way Pole looks very interesting. It's a very irregular surface.
Yeah.
And it just looked like, I thought, I'd like to go there. I'd like to check that place out. So that's where I am right now. I am currently in orbit around Pole. I am, the very next thing I do, is I'm going to detach my lander and I'm going to land and get a soil sample in the whole bit. And the gravity on there is very, very slight. But even though technically I've landed on Laythe, I really haven't, because I guess with this game, you know, it's like if you load an earlier save, it never happened.
Yeah.
You know,
until you make it home.
Yeah.
You know, it's only stories.
It's like, you know, what happens in quick save stays in quick save.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, Laythe is tough. My understanding is that there's some other planets too. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Vale and Tylo supposedly have really heavy gravity, and they're very difficult. Vale is an ice planet, and I thought you might find this interesting. It is supposed to be the game's analog to Europa.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So you could make a movie and call it Vale Report. The other thing that I will say as far as progress goes, I, for the first time, successfully built a large ship in orbit. And the trick is use the Clampotron senior docking ports and make sure that the connections are flat.
Yeah.
Okay. The problem I was running to in the past, and I didn't realize it until now, was I wasn't making my connection points completely flat.
They were conical.
And so what was happening was there was the minute I would start to accelerate, all kinds of wiggle would move in. No, you've got to create, I mean, your connections have to be perfectly flat where they butt up against each other. And I built a really big ship. And for anyone who's seen the movie 2001, it kind of looks like Discovery. And it's modular. It's about 5 different pieces all put together. And what's really nice about a modular craft was, fuel, when you have a long ship, obviously fuel drains from top to bottom or front to back.
Yeah.
Well, the middle 2 sections of my ship, where they were and I'm using the KW rocketry, and this tank is only available in that, but it's the very long tank that has the black stripes. It's white and it has the black stripes on it. And I had 2 of those back to back, and each one of them had 2 rings of atomic motors. Okay, and then on the end of that, I had another where I was connecting a much bigger engine. In fact, I wrote this down because this has turned out to be my absolute favorite engine in the game. It's the Kerbodyne KR-2L advanced engine. It's the silver engine. And that, for some reason, is just the perfect engine for me. It's the jack of all trades. But anyway, so I had 2 sections with the atomic motors, and then the very last section was the Kerbodyne advanced engine. Well, by the time I got into orbit around Pole, one of my tanks that had the atomic motors on it had emptied, okay? And to jettison it, I would have lost that section. I would have lost the one after it that had the rocket motors, and then I would have lost the section that had the Kerbalcast advanced engine.
Yeah.
So what I did, since the ship is modular now, I literally disconnected the last two sections that were still full of fuel, backed them off a little bit, disconnected the empty section, increased its altitude, raised it above the other ship, and then I put the other two sections back together.
Oh, so you just booted out a middle section.
Yeah, basically I pulled it apart, took the middle section out, and then put those two together again. So it's the same basic ship, it's just shorter.
Yeah.
And it was, I've never done that before. I have always built ships where when something runs out of fuel, you eject it and there's no way to reconnect it. Mm-hmm. But building it like this, where everything is in pieces with connectors on the front and back, you can like reassemble the ship in orbit. Yeah. So it's almost like I have a Lego set in orbit.
Yeah, you got this little I don't know.
But that was fun. I did that in Joule orbit before I went and got to Pole. And what I ended up doing was the section that was left over still had some RCS fuel in it. And I was able to slow it down enough to bring its periapsis down to where Joule itself grabbed a hold of it and sucked it in.
Yeah.
And and I rode that thing down. I've said this before. When you deorbit onto Joule, when you get low enough, what happens is you actually go under the surface into this totally black area, and you're in it for just a few seconds, and then the whole thing explodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, you actually go like under it.
Yeah, you get absorbed into Joule.
You know what I think would be so cool? Can you imagine if they did like a hidden Easter egg in the game where like if you deorbited into Joule, there's like a black hole at the center or like a wormhole that like sends you somewhere else? There was a game, this is a complete aside, but there was a game, one of the very first PC games I ever played. It was a LucasArts game, and it was a Western, and it was called Outlaws, and it was a first-person shooter. You ever heard of this game?
How old was this?
Oh, this was like early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, graphics, I mean, just not too far, not very far above like the original Doom, which was not exactly a graphic. Yeah. I mean, for the time, it looked great. But, by today's standards, it's like, oh, my God, my iPhone looks better than that. But, Outlaws, they had one of those hidden Easter eggs. There was an outhouse in the game where if you threw dynamite into it and blew it up, there was a hole in the ground under the outhouse that was full of water. If you jumped in the water and went all the way down... Yeah, I like the face you just made. If you jumped in the water and went all the way down, there was a tunnel down there. There was an underwater tunnel that you could swim through, and you would come up, and there's this hidden chamber, okay? Huh. Now, remember, this is a Western, okay?
Yeah.
When you'd go into this hidden chamber, and you'd go around the corner, and you were hearing this really otherworldly humming sound. You'd go around the corner, and there was a UFO.
Oh.
And you'd walk up, and you'd knock on it, and the window would open, and it's all these aliens, and they're like mutilating cattle. And then they would slam the window shut, and it would never open again. But it was one of those weird hidden Easter eggs in the game. And, and it's like, how many people thought to jump down the hole under the outhouse?
At least one, I know.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the one who discovered it. A friend of mine did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was
because I don't know that I would have ever jumped in the potty hole.
It's funny because you mentioned like, oh yeah, and he goes in the outhouse. There's a game I played on Sega Saturn, and you piloted a chopper, and you're just like shooting tanks and all this stuff. Okay. I don't remember the name of it, but you had this one guy like that you could drop off, and he would go like escort people to the LZ. Mm-hmm. If you dropped him off near this outhouse, he would go in it, and you'd hear him whistling, and like you'd hear him going to the bathroom, and then he would leave, and the thing would blow up, and there's like a power up there.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's funny you mentioned blowing up an outhouse. I thought it was like an homage there, but who knows?
Anyway, that would be so cool if Kerbal had a hidden Easter egg somewhere, like a wormhole or something.
It's like you fall through the planet.
And yes, I know Squad is cursing me as we speak.
It could be a cloaking device for
there you go.
An enemy ship. It just
true.
looks like a planet.
That's true.
So
You never know.
Yeah.
Well, is that it for our progress?
That's it for my progress.
Okay, good. Well, let's go ahead and move into mission briefing, and we're going to start out. I told you about my adventures and my misadventures in the game. Well, one of our longtime listeners and regular contributors, Amy K, has been having all kinds of problems with landers, and she was nice enough to send us an audio letter describing her misadventures with landing.
Hi guys, I thought I'd take this opportunity to write about my fail of the week, which is related to something I have a great deal of trouble with, landers. Please bear in mind that I play with far and deadly re-entry when reading this, because I like the added realism and consideration, even though I know it makes things harder for myself. The other day, I decided to put my week of Googling and reading up on landers into practice and head for the Mun in an attempt to achieve two things: land upright and get home. Jebediah swallowed hard, pessimistic after witnessing my previous landings, updated his will and got into the rocket. He was reassured slightly, however, after seeing more fuel on this lander than on any other I'd previously launched. I had double the usual fuel, and my reading up on landers encouraged me to put radial engines on this one. I'd housed it in fairings, loaded it with plenty of sciencey goodness, and I was feeling really pretty darn good about this lander, truth be told. Now, I have a trouble with fuel when I land, so I launched the biggest rocket I had built to date, and got into orbit without too much of an issue. I headed toward my Mun encounter with so much fuel left, I was confident enough to tell Jebediah that his family won't be needing to cash in on the death by Amy's cock-up compensation written into his contract this week. They usually cash in on this a few times a week, to be fair. I now wish I'd never made the arrangement, but lawyers on Kerbal aren't the brightest of sparks. So I approach my Mun encounter, get into a circular orbit, decouple my lander and make my first observation. I have too much fuel in the wrong place. My lander is full of fuel, yes, but the ship that brought me here has more. Much more. Oh well, we've landed on the Mun with less fuel before, and we have more engines now. We'll be fine, Jeb, I think to myself, and dismiss this issue. So we come in for the landing, and I'm impressed by the manoeuvrability my radial engines give me as we reach cock-up number 2, and this self-induced smack in the face for me. I realise all too late that 4 times the amount of fuel, plus 4 times the number of engines, does not equal win. Okay, we can still do this, I tell Jeb as he starts looking at me with less and less optimism as we get down to 7 metres per second to land, and yes, we're going to be upright for once. Yes, yes, yes! Now, I'm convinced there is localised wind on the Mun. Everybody can tell me I'm wrong, and science can do the same thing, but the next word out of my mouth was no. And, as with almost every other landing I'd ever done, over we go onto our side. Oh well, we tried, and it's still a landing, so yay? Now, I've become an expert of getting back up into space through the roll until you hit a bump, bounce a bit upright, and throttle up your engines method, which works wonderfully with one engine, but now I have 4 radially mounted, it doesn't work so well due to the fact that it can't roll. Time for an F5 as I see this going a bit dodgy. So, let's see if I can just go across the ground and angle up. So throttle up, boom. Nope, F9. After a lot of fiddling with landing gears, Jeb going underneath them so they're on his head, then jumping being one of many things I tried, I finally get into a position where I can just about get off the surface and eventually into orbit. Let's just go home and be thankful we got this far and get off the surface, Jeb, I say as I hit F5, not wanting to repeat the torturous process of getting back off the surface without blowing up. Now, Kerbal life demands that the moment you hit F5 is the perfect time for you to notice that you have almost zero fuel. So I spend the next 30 minutes of real time trying to find any burn that can eventually get us home to Kerbin. I finally find my only option that will take all of our fuel and be an enormous aerobrake, with our apoapsis around the distance of the Mun, but it would put us under 50 kilometres at our periapsis. So we burn for it, hit it, and run out of fuel just as we go below 50 kilometres. We approach Kerbin for the first pass, and I watch in horror as we burn horribly, and I try to use my wits and turn the ship sideways to put up more resistance, take heat off the parachute, and maybe slow down a little more. This seems to work, and we are successful in our attempt to not explode as we head back out into space for our second pass. We come back into Kerbin's atmosphere, and we do the same again. Our third orbit is our last, as our luck no longer holds, and the ship breaks apart. Somehow the command module survives, and I watch the gauges as our ablative shielding rapidly drops as the G-force increases along with the heat of re-entry. We have barely anything in heat shielding remaining, but we finally drop below 20k. The forces and heat drop off, and I scream in joy that we did it. Jeb will live, and we have loads of science back after an almost entirely catastrophic mission. I just about finished congratulating myself and Jeb as we hit 5k altitude, and I deploy the parachute by pressing space to bring the traumatic mission to an end. Then I press space again to deploy the parachute. Then again I press space to deploy the chute. Nothing. I'm now panicking as I see no parachute and we are down to 3k, so I right-click on the parachute to manually deploy to find that it won't. It hasn't blown up as it's still there, but it looks like it's already been deployed and the contents are missing. Could it have been deployed somewhere else and I just hadn't noticed? Or did it just fail? Can it just fail? There's no time to ponder as I desperately forget the science and try to keep Jeb alive. His best shot, also known as my only plan, is to jump out at about 750 metres and burn his RCS like his life depended on it, and coincidentally, it does. So, 750 metres approaches, he EVAs and burns, and he burns, and he slows, and he slows, and it's all in the hand of Kerbal fate now. I'm holding my breath and pushing as hard as I can on the shift key, as if the pressure I apply somehow equates to a little more power in Jeb's personal RCS. And as he slows towards the mortar, it looks like he might just make it, and Mrs. Kerman is coming by later to pick up Jeb's death by Amy's cock-up compensation, and I stare at the screen, heartbroken by an epic fail. So to sum up, my fail of the week shows that no matter what I do, I just can't build landers. So I would appreciate any help you or any other listener can give me specifically for building and using landers. What are your processes and considerations in your own landers? Homer to your mobile.
Okay, there you go. Again, that's Amy K, and she is asking for some help. With landers
in a very humorous way.
Actually, you know what? I know she'd probably scream if she. Well, obviously she's going to hear me say this, but it's like, don't help her so that she'll do the funny stories still. No, that's not what I asked.
The more she messes up, the more entertainment we get out of it.
The funnier it is.
Which is like honestly the story of most of my progress reports. Like if he wasn't like this, if he wasn't angry all the time, well, how would we be amused? He's got to be angry at rendezvous.
He's got to be angry. He's angry. Again, Amy K, we want to thank her so much for a great letter and a great story. And I guess the way to thank her is to get her some help. So Amy needs help with landers. Please give Amy some help. We're going to move into mission briefing now.
We've got something important to start with.
Yes, and we have something important to start with. There is a petition, and I'm not going to read the web address because we'd probably be here for another hour by the time I got done with this. But very simply, there is on whitehouse.gov, there's a tab there for petitions. And somebody has started a petition to increase NASA's funding to 1% of the federal budget. And they need to get a certain amount of signatures, and they need to get it by a certain deadline. So I strongly encourage you, go to whitehouse.gov, go to petitions, and find this. Sign your name. It will ask for your email address. Be sure and give it a valid email address because your signature doesn't count until you confirm your email address. I have done this. 1% of the federal budget doesn't sound, that may sound like a lot. The reality is that right now NASA is getting about 0.5 cent of the budget, and this would basically increase it to 1 cent. Or that's the way Neil deGrasse Tyson has talked about it. So again, go to the whitehouse.gov, sign the petition. Let's get some money to NASA.
So do
you have a quizzical look on your face. Do
you have to be, since you just need an email address and then need to confirm it, do you have to be a U.S. citizen in order to do it?
I don't know.
Well, if you don't, space programs help everybody. You know, it's kind of like how we're using,
Well, the United States is the only country in the world that does not have to do a country designation.
Yeah.
So if you do an email that has a country designation and it kicks it back, then we know the answer to that question.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So anyway, but again, let's get NASA some funding. Yes. Okay. Next, you've got a letter.
Yeah.
Okay,
this one comes from Thomas Eccles. Hey guys.
Hey.
I've made a trailer for Kerbalcast.
They traveled to Duna, the reddest planet in the Kerbal system, where skill is everything and failure is not an option. This year, get ready to ride a rocket to the stars with Kerbalcast.
Oh, cool! I want to see. I want to
Yeah.
see that movie. I guess we should tell the story behind that. He created a last week. He sent in an audio letter.
The very first audio letter.
The very first audio letter we've ever gotten. Well, the following week he sent he did a video that was about 1 minute long, and it had the music, and it had some really cool images on it, and it had text on the screen that said everything that you heard. And it was done in the style of like a summer action movie blockbuster. And so anyway, I thought it'd be kind of cool to use the music that he provided, the text that he provided, and make it like,
just throw a voice on there.
But anyway, so that's what you heard. That's the that's the Michael Bay promo for Kerbalcast.
Okay, and now I have something addressed to me.
Minus Megan Fox.
Yeah, I have something addressed to me from Mr. Eccles. Now this part of the email is for Nos. Nos, I have a challenge for you. You need to get a spinny and a rolly on the moon by the next podcast after you publish this one, and land them less than 4K away from each other. Good luck. Okay.
Are you up to it?
Can
you do it?
Is it cheating if it's a spinny and a rolly in one?
Yes. Because that is not the spirit of what he wants you to.
Okay.
He wants the important thing.
All right.
Is the distance to each other.
I'm glad to do this. It'll give me a break from, pulling my hair out with Rendezvous. So I'll give this a try and then go back to Rendezvous.
Now, here's a question, though. What if it's a spinny and a rolly, and you break it in half and roll one of them 4 kilometers away?
Everything I make breaks in half.
Yeah, see? Now, if you break it in half and you put the two pieces 4 kilometers apart, does that meet the spirit of the contract?
If it lands 4K away and survives, then yes.
Okay.
I don't know how that'll happen, but yes. Okay.
You should have been a lawyer.
Strapped up for takeoff, flying high, from Thomas Eccles, your number one fan.
All right. And listen, great job on that video trailer.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It was really cool. I mean, he really did a good job with that. And that's I wanted to just kind of make a radio deal out of it. Okay, next letter. This comes from North Star. And this goes back to a question that I threw out last week. You remember I was having trouble being captured by Elu without burning up all of my fuel. Mm-hmm. And North Star writes in and he says, I understand Biff is having some trouble capturing at Elu, and I thought I might be of assistance in this matter. And he is. He says, these are 3 different possible solutions to Biff's difficulties in having enough fuel left over after capturing at Elu that don't simply involve packing more Delta V into your craft through larger fuel tanks, staging, or better ISP engines. Number 1, make use of gravity assists to get to Elu. Dark matter segments on this, the previous segment on this, should be helpful in that regard. Although note, an Eve gravity assist does not work well with solution number 2, coming up. A Mooner gravity assist works fine with number 2, however. Number 2, perform an aero boost at Duna or Joule. Basically, head to Duna or Joule first, and use the atmosphere there to perform a capture into a highly elliptical orbit, spending just a tiny bit of fuel to raise your periapsis above the atmosphere after the capture. Alternately, capture directly into a circular orbit around Ike or one of Joule's moons, and refuel your craft at a fuel depot you've stationed there earlier, before making the final step of your journey. When Elu swings into position to make a transfer to it from Joule or Duna, take it. Note that this will require a long time waiting at Duna or Joule for a transfer window due to the extremely slow orbital periods involved. Do you know what this is an aside, do you know what I have decided for these long transfer windows and these long interplanetary transfers and things?
What?
Now that I have seen Interstellar, I have decided the Kerbals are hibernating.
Oh, yeah, they're just sleeping it out.
Yeah, because before I thought, man, I hope these guys have like a lot of DVDs or something.
Yeah.
Because, some of these transfers take like, 2 or 3 years.
I think they just stare at a wall and drool for however long.
No, the Kerbals, they go into hibernation. So that's what it is. And then when they get to the encounter, that's when they wake up.
Oh.
See? Thank you, Interstellar. Which I saw, by the way. I saw again.
Oh, you saw it again?
Even better the second time. Okay. Back to North Star's letter. Note that I call solution number 2 an aero boost because relative to the sun, your aero brake is actually increasing your orbital speed, greatly reducing the delta V you'll need to expend capturing When you get to Eeloo, you'll be traveling at a more similar speed and swing through Eeloo's sphere of influence with less difference in velocity, which will also allow you to perform more of your capture burn close to periapsis. And number 3, perform a higher speed intercept with Eeloo. Unlike Solutions 1 or 2, this is the only approach that will actually save you and your Kerbals time versus a normal intercept trajectory. Basically, instead of planning a Hohmann transfer, am I saying that right? Hohmann?
Let me see the word.
Hohmann, Hohmann, Hohmann.
Oh, I don't know.
Transfer, where your apoapsis is just barely reaches to Eeloo. Plan an intercept trajectory where your apoapsis would be slightly above Eeloo relative to the sun, if Eeloo didn't just happen to get in the way. When you get to Eeloo using solution number 3, it will take you less delta V to capture because you will be moving faster relative to the sun at this point, and there will be a smaller velocity difference. The greatest reason for this is because the transfer will be faster, and thus the sun will have less time to slow your craft down en route to Eeloo. Normally, a capture burn at Eeloo is composed almost entirely of increasing your speed relative to the sun. If you have less of a velocity difference to make up, however, your capture burn will be shorter and cheaper, which will also allow you to take greater advantage of the Oberth effect by performing more of your capture near apoapsis with Eeloo. I didn't realize that that's what you were doing, increasing relative to the sun. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Note that solution number 3 is highly sensitive to angle of your approach at Eeloo. If you spend too much extra fuel getting a faster intercept to Eeloo, your angle of approach will have more of a radial component relative to the sun, rather than the prograde component you're seeking to maximize to reduce the delta V you need to expend on capture. Thus, practice it in moderation and keep your expectations reasonable. You will only be able to save a couple hundred delta V on the capture at most with this method, and will spend at least half that much fuel performing a longer transfer burn to Eeloo in the first place. This method also combines very poorly with Eve gravity assists. More of your approach trajectory will be radial, but it works very well with Duna boosts from solution number 2, from elliptical orbit around Duna. Your transfer burn to Eeloo will be much shorter to start with, making adding extra burn time easier, and your transfer trajectory will be more horizontal relative to the sun to begin with. Note that the fuel savings with any one of them will be relatively small, but you can safely combine solutions number 2 and 3 for larger total fuel savings. Fly bravely, and may you always have a star to guide you. Again, North Star, thank you so much. That's a very lengthy letter, but there's a lot of good advice in there.
Yeah, it's like chock full of info.
Well, I think, don't you have the last letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is from FIT Orion. You've heard of gravity assists? Where you come in from behind the planet with regards to the planet's motion in its orbit, and this speeds you up. Well, coming into orbit from the front will do the opposite. This will result in you needing less delta V to get into orbit. I believe going directly out is more efficient than going to Joule first. Unless you use Joule or the other planets as gravity assists, entering a stable orbit of anything but your target, though, will be a waste of fuel. Something they recently added, and I just discovered, if you set your view to focus on your target while you are working on your maneuver node, then you can see where the encounter will be in relation to the planet. This helps a lot to position the encounter ahead or behind or above or below your target. Coming in behind means you'll get an orbit in the same direction as the rotation of the planet, which helps for landing. Coming in ahead means will have you in an opposite orbit of the planet's rotation, which is fine for a probe or orbiter mission, but will mean it takes a bit more fuel to land. About getting science around the Space Center. We were talking about this before. We had the letter about, like all the little tiny, 5 feet away, there's a different biome. FIT Orion says, I don't have any problem with it. Most playthroughs, it's not required, and I for one, don't use it much, except maybe right on the launch pad to get some easy science right at the start, so I can have decouplers. Everything else in the area gives so little science as to not be important, and just serves as a little flavor for anyone who cares to wander around exploring. And it's also good for people who just start and don't know where to get some science.
They need to have an outhouse you can blow up and get science.
Yeah, you blow it up and there's some science there. Old Sci-Fi, a book called The Wasp. Aliens and space travel. The main character gets altered to look like the aliens and infiltrates their world as a spy. He sends his reports and creates his subversive materials on a typewriter. It fascinates me that they can predict a lot of stuff, but computers are not among them.
Yeah.
And for Interstellar, someone should have given them a copy of KSP, and it would have solved most of my problems with the physics in the movie.
I had such a different perspective. I'm not going to do any spoilers, but there's a couple of places in that movie where, as a Kerbal player, I think I had a different perspective than some other people.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was going, hey, or
it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, that's not what you need to do, or you need to do this, or whatever. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's cool. Yeah, they talk about things that they don't anticipate. Like if you go back and watch the original Star Trek, or if you go back to a lot of the early sci-fi, one of the things that you'll hear almost constantly is they talk about tapes. The computers. They always talk about library tapes. Because what were the computers like back then? They had those gigantic reel-to-reels.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, the little wafer-thin things on the original Star Trek, which look a whole lot like the little floppies that we used to have, that was supposed to be like tape.
Yeah.
The idea that you would have solid state.
You can put tape on this small device.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, that's one of those things that they didn't anticipate. They just, in the future, tape just got smaller.
Yeah.
So obviously. And another thing is, there's not a touch screen to be found on the original Enterprise.
No.
So they're all over next gen, though.
How much touchscreen stuff do they have in, do they have really touchscreens in the ISS or anything?
Oh, now that I can't answer. I'm talking sci-fi.
Yeah. I just wonder if
so.
we currently have any, touchscreen stuff they're using in space.
They somebody chewed a wad of bubble gum and they stuck an iPad on the wall.
Yeah, there you go.
Who knows? Well, I think, isn't that the shortest mission briefing we've ever done?
Yeah, we read what we get.
We read what we get.
Okay.
We're going to move on now to Spaceplane Flight School.
Hey there, Kerbonauts. This is Wanderfound again. This week, I'll be going through the basics of landing a spaceplane. This is something that a lot of novice pilots find extremely difficult, but as with most things in KSP, it actually isn't that hard once you know what you're doing. The first thing you want to do, before your plane even leaves the tarmac, is to send a Kerbal out to the beach at the eastern end of the KSC runway. When he gets there, plant a flag, and give that flag a name like KSC Landing Beacon, because that's what you'll use it for. If you set this flag as a target, you can use it to work out the direction and distance to the runway, and you can also use it to tell if you've got your landing approach lined up properly. Look at the target marker on your navball. If your plane is pointed at it, then you're heading for the runway. But getting to the runway isn't the only job. You also need to be in line with the runway. Because the KSC strip runs exactly east-west, if you're lined up correctly and coming in from the west, then your target marker should be on a bearing of exactly 90 degrees. If it isn't, you're coming in crooked. So you want to fly to one side or the other until your target marker is at 90 degrees, and then fly towards that. Most of the time, you'll be starting from a prograde orbit, so you'll be coming in from the west. The mountains to the west of KSC are about 5,000 metres high, so you need to keep above that altitude until you pass them. But once you are, you want to drop down to the deck as soon as you can. This is the key to easy landings. Get lined up, low and slow as early as possible. The more shallow and straight you can make your final approach, the lower the chance of something going wrong. By the time you're within 20 kilometres of KSC, you want to be in line, below 500 metres of altitude, and flying at slower than 150 metres per second. Exactly what speed is the right speed is going to vary depending on your aircraft. You need to be moving fast enough that you can maintain level flight, but within that limit it's best to be going as slow as possible. Keep in mind, however, that a hypersonic spaceplane is a very different beastie from a conventional small aircraft. 100 metres per second would be a crazy landing speed in a Cessna or something like that, but it's perfectly reasonable for a spaceplane. Try to avoid any last-second drastic manoeuvres. You'll probably just make things worse. If you mess up the approach, don't be afraid to pull the nose up, light the engines, and go around for another try. While you're first getting the hang of it, you may find it easier to do some practice landings on the paddock beside the runway instead of on the runway itself. That paddock is perfectly flat, and it never rains at KSC, so you don't have to worry about getting stuck in the mud. A stock instrument that is very important in landing is your VSI, the Vertical Speed Indicator. This is the dial just to the right of your altitude numbers at the top of screen, and it tells you your climb or sink rate in metres per second. The first thing to remember is that the VSI uses a logarithmic scale. While the first section of the dial goes from 0 to 10, the next part goes from 10 to 100, and then the next bit from 100 to 1000. During landing, you want your sink rate to be as low as possible, but don't panic too much. Stock landing gear are very tough. Anything below 10 metres per second is usually fine. Once you touch down, be ready to do some gentle steering to hold to the middle of the runway and apply the brakes as soon as you can. Make sure that you've got the steering unlocked and the brakes disabled on your front landing gear. If you don't, you'll be in danger of collapsing the front gear when you try to steer or brake. If you're having trouble coming to a stop in time, a bit of reverse thrust from RCS or Verners can be helpful, and in extreme circumstances you can even use tricks like forward-facing separatrons as emergency brakes, but a well-built space plane shouldn't require that sort of trick. There are an assortment of mods that provide all sorts of landing assistance, but the simplest aids are those like Kerbal Flight Indicators or NavHUD that project your navball markers out into the main view. If you've got one of these, setting your glide path is easy. Just plonk your prograde marker onto the start of the runway and keep it there until touchdown. You can land just fine without those aids, but it does take a bit more practice to get it right. Anyway, that's it from me for this week. I'll be back later on with some re-entry and construction tips. Keep having fun and keep being good to each other. The KSP community is a wonderfully friendly place, but it's up to all of us to make sure that it stays that way.
And that was another edition of Wanderfound's Flight School.
That is so cool.
Yeah, learning how to build them is like the main thing that I've been trying to deal with.
Yeah.
Is like, you know, how much stuff to put on there and how to position it.
Well, we had, I can tell that it's making a difference because on our Twitter, somebody has already posted a picture of they built a space plane and they docked it with a space station.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it is so cool. It's Andrew Mason, Mason Knapp 77.
Huh.
And it's so cool because, you know, they have that part on the space planes where it opens up and there's a docking port.
Yeah.
And so what you've got here is it's basically, it looks like the ISS docking to the underside of a fighter jet.
That's awesome.
Anyway, isn't that cool? He
Yeah.
tweeted that out and I retweeted it. So anyway, is it time for the Shea Challenge?
It's time for the Shea Challenge.
Cool.
This challenge is, in addition to the building you can make in the Space Center, why not make a house? Make it however or whatever you like. A houseboat, a trailer, a mansion, anything. Before launching it, make sure your computer can handle it. Good luck and happy building. All hail the Kraken.
Woohoo! Yeah, remember last week it was build and destroy. This week
Yeah.
I guess it's build and be creative.
Build and get comfortable.
Go forth and be creative,
'cause you're
my
home.
son. So, okay, well, that wraps it up for this edition of Kerbalcast, episode 27. We are on the Comet. As always, there's quite a few people we want to thank.
All right, first off, we want to thank all of our listeners. Thank you guys.
Thank you,
And
thank you,
we want
thank
to
you.
thank our regular contributors, everybody who's been providing content to the show, and everyone who's been writing in.
And I think I should mention at this point, in case you're curious what happened to Dark Matters and Modder's Minute this week, Dark Mushroom has a wicked cold, and he said that Dark Matters this week would have sounded like a goose honking.
Yeah.
So, you know, we said, you know, rest up. We'll see you next time.
And we mentioned before that DK is a really busy guy.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's got a
Yeah.
lot of stuff going on. So he just, you know, he had other things he was working on.
But
so.
he's coming back. But, you know, we always appreciate their contributions. And they may not be with us this week, but they are not forgotten as well.
And since we didn't get those, we managed to get two really awesome segments, one from Amy K and one from Wanderfound. So we want to thank you guys for pitching in. We also want to thank Squad. Thank you for the game.
And my life.
Yeah. The moderators
or what I have for a life.
The moderators of the KSP and Kerbal Academy subreddits, Ascalon.
Yes. Who put us on YouTube. We've talked about this before. If you would like to enjoy Kerbalcast, and the only way you can do so is through closed captioning, we're on YouTube thanks to Ascalon. It's a lot of effort, but he puts us up there every week so you can enjoy it.
And just search Kerbalcast on YouTube and you'll find us.
There we are.
And all the music you've heard is by Professor Soap. You can find him at facebook.com/Professor Soap.
And while you're on the internet, we strongly encourage you to write into us. We would certainly love to hear from you. Write us letters, or if you'd like, do audio letters as well. You heard one today. Our email address is kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. On Twitter, we are at Kerbalcast.
You can download episodes directly from kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com, and you can subscribe to us on iTunes.
And also, as we said, look for us on YouTube. And that does it for this week's edition of Kerbalcast. And I'm going to switch the order.
Oh.
Our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
You weren't quite sure what to do with that, were you?
I don't know. I got nervous.
You were like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I don't go first. And I am your LMP, Lunar Module Pilot, Biff Aldrin. Until next time, happy Kerbaling.